You're also on TV.
Yes. Oh, good.
Yes, there you
Good
are.
morning to all the viewers on KTN. I haven't been on KTN for some time.
Yeah, so now it's
I'm
a
happy
double
to be
whammy.
back.
Yeah, because we killed two birds with one stone here.
That's
And
excellent.
We're getting into it this morning, and there's, like you said, it's hot stuff, it's heavy stuff, and this is the thing that we're looking at for us to be able to have sober discourse around some of these things that would lead to then probably even more sober action, and that's what we're talking about today when we talk about lawlessness and constitutionalism. But before we do that, as you may have heard, for that little bird that is on your shoulder, we go around the continent every week and we come and land in a country where we take their proverbs and we want to get the meaning or your interpretation of those proverbs, and Dennis is going to share those with you.
Yeah, and today we're in the West African part of the of the continent, pretty much. We are in Nigeria, and Nigeria talk about a population of 230 million people with over 250 ethnic groups. In Kenya, we say we have around 40-something ethnic groups. Here we're talking about 250, but we have three major ethnic groups. We have the Hausa Fulani from the north, we have the Yoruba from southwest, and Igbo from southeast. Talk about Nigerians, and there is always that fight of who prepares the best jollof. Who do you think prepares the best jollof? Be careful.
Maybe the
Ghanaians or Nigerians?
Nigerians.
Nigerians, right?
I think Nigerians make very
I'll tell
good
you why.
jollof.
Because their jollof is spicy. The Ghanaian one is sweeter, is mild. But if you want the actual thing, the spicy one.
Actually,
It's
they
better.
call it pepe.
Pepe.
There was a time I was somewhere and pepe became a very big topic.
Yeah.
Because all their food has a lot of spice.
Spice,
Yeah.
yes. So that's why it actually stands out. But let's go to the proverb of the day. It is equally as hot as pepper, but you will get it.
Let's see.
Yeah. The frog does not run in the daytime for nothing. The frog does not run in the daytime for nothing. How would you interpret that?
You know, a frog ideally does not run. So if it runs, because it hops.
Yeah.
A frog hops. So if then a frog is running in the daytime, then it means something very unusual has happened. So I would say then it's an indication. It's a red flag that if it's running, not hopping, then there is some danger somewhere. Or there is something so compelling that has caused an unusual occurrence to happen for a frog to run.
And isn't it interesting? It's from Nigeria.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think coming from Nigeria, it's understandable. I've been to Cairo, and I think Abuja, and I saw the population and you know, like the number of people in Nigeria. So when I hear about the frog and the running, then I truly can understand what that would mean.
You see a frog
coming
in the middle
from
of all those
within
people.
the context, because here context is everything.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? Context is everything.
This is why we want Dennis Okari, because a frog would appear on this table if he's not.
And it was not hopping.
And
You
it
know,
was
you know
not
frogs have a web feet. Yeah. So yeah, it's running.
Yeah.
It's okay.
All right. I mean,
Watch your words and do.
have you heard of village
I'll start
uncles?
watching the desk, you know.
Well, Veronica, thank you so much, Senator, for coming. As we're looking into a number of these issues, it's good that we're able to have different voices to share insights around certain things, and that it is necessary for us to have conversations, because if we don't, then we either are okay with the way things are going, or we're not interested.
Yes.
So as we discuss and we're talking about lawlessness and constitutionalism, these have been in the public arena for the longest time. They've been more so in the public arena when we see the protests that have come in place vis-a-vis the hooliganism and the criminality that has been introduced into what is a constitutional process.
Yes.
And the lawlessness that has come as a result of that, unfortunately, has been applied across board. Now, where we are coming to say is that, how do we draw the line, or where do we draw the line, and who ought to be careful about what they say when we're applying these tags across board? And that's where we'd like to start off with you today.
Well, first of all, let me say we have a very robust constitution. That was the effort of several Kenyans and different stakeholders who had an opportunity to input into the document. before the making of that constitution. And it was a journey that was walked for a very long time by Kenyans. And finally, we had a constitution, initially a draft that was eventually, through very serious public participation over a number of years, was then reduced into a constitution that was acceptable, and a referendum, what you would call a referendum or a vote, was taken, and majority of Kenyans decided this was the document that was going to guide our nation, our belief system, our rule of law, and our constitutionalism. And with the kind of effort that was done and the institutions that were inbuilt within the Constitution, it was then the belief of every Kenyan that if we are guided by the roadmap of this Constitution, then we would have a predictability in terms of our governance system, in terms of our behavior, our political behavior, or our political mannerism. We would then have something that you could even tell someone who doesn't know what Kenya is, that to begin with, you can look at our constitution and begin to understand us as a people and as a nation. Then it gives stipulations, because if you look at the background within which this constitution was enacted, it then gives stopgap measures of how to resolve issues that Kenyans felt were ailing them at the time when this constitution was being done. So you'll find a lot of checks and balances were built into the constitution. Now, one of the articles that was input in this constitution was Article 37. This article was put in because when Kenyans were clamoring for constitution and the second liberation, they felt they were not heard enough. There were grievances that they felt the government was not looking into. So I assume when Article 37 was put in, it was supposed to ventilate for anybody who felt dissatisfied with whatever public entity or public institution was around them that did not meet the conditions or the stipulations that were provided for under the Constitution. So Article 37 was then supposed to offer the citizen an opportunity to express their grievance and to resolve that grievance in a peaceful manner. Which respected the rights of other Kenyans. Now, what we have seen now with, let me put the Sabasaba on the 25th of June, what we have seen, to me, is not an exercise of that Article 37. It is just something else. It morphed into something else, which is quite unfortunate. Because if I see a protest where you're not holding your placard to indicate what you're dissatisfied about, you're not holding your, they like the tarumbeta. What do you call this tarumbeta?
The
vuvuzela. The ones that they scream outside Parliament. We are used to a certain noise on Tuesday when we come back from recess. There was always the group of either doctors or clinical officers outside Parliament demonstrating several times in a very modest way. Just they'll make the noise, yes, with the vuvuzela, which is acceptable because they are not hurting anybody. They're not throwing a stone, or the teachers. But what morphed on 25th of June was a very risky situation for this nation, and we should not allow it. And we should also not be afraid to say this is not what we are looking for, because so many Kenyans are dissatisfied with the manner in which those demonstrations were conducted. But so many Kenyans are afraid to speak out and say, we don't like this and we have to do our business in a different way. For me, maybe I'm an extremist in revolting anything that looks like violence, because as a woman, I have seen the dimensions that violence take when it looks, you look at women and children. The person who suffers most first is the women. And I'm not saying that men don't suffer. Men actually do suffer, because many times they may also face the gun when something goes very wrong and they are demonstrating. And I think majority of the people who go out there to demonstrate are men and young men. So for me, I would say
women.
And women. Lately, we have many more
young women.
Actually, lately we have seen many more women. But unfortunately, after the demos were done, after 25th, we were shocked to see on social media some men boasting that they raped women, they actually put it on social media. And definitely it's not all men. It's a few rotten eggs in the basket that made it so bad that a right to demonstrate went to an extent of women being removed from motorbikes to be raped or defiled. And then I also saw videos of some of the demonstrators who engaged in criminal activity. They even entered estates, residential. Can you imagine that? Residential estates were invaded. We had burning and looting. We had police stations burned down. I know people might be angry, but if you ask me, one of the most difficult situations for a country to be at is when you find that ordinary citizens have found it easy to even burn down a police station.
But Senator, were the people who did these things that you mentioned, burning down police stations, robbing or stealing
Yes.
from, shops and all of this, which if again were in the minority, can we lump them together and say that these individuals who formed these groups were part of the larger group who was protesting for a particular thing? Were they the same people?
I would hesitate to answer whether they are the same, because what you happen is a criminal element that wants to take advantage of a situation.
Assimilates also.
Yes,
Yeah.
you pretend that they are protesting because that's the easiest way to get access.
So then can we blanketly then call the demonstrations or the protests criminal in nature across board?
I would not call them that, because some of the people, even when you look at the profile of some of the people who went to the streets, some are not criminals. Some genuinely woke up saying, we are going to picket, we are going to demonstrate. And when you hype young people, they will actually say, even students, like when there is a riot in a campus, those are not criminals. They are people who are thinking, I have a cause to go to the street with. But what happened is, that situation then offered an opportunity for a person who would want to camouflage, a criminal who would want to camouflage with different intentions to infiltrate the demonstrators and then commit the criminality. Because the one thing we cannot deny in this age of technology and cameras all over and people having phones where they video, we cannot deny that entities, institutions were invaded, businesses were robbed. There was wanton destruction of property. We cannot deny that, because it also came on social media. And what we also need to understand now is that even for demonstrators, assuming you are demonstrating along Moi Avenue or along Kenyatta, along one of the streets in Nairobi, one of the things we need to understand now, there are cameras all over.
Absolutely.
Meaning, if something goes off and you're part of a group that is invading a supermarket, just an analysis and a review, forensic review of some of those cameras and footages, imagine they will lead the investigators to your door. They can actually capture the face, get back into the database, check even with the registrar of persons, and they can pick you by the ID.
And yet, Senator,
and with the
they
AI,
don't. And yet, Senator, they don't. And that was leading to now when I want
think,
to stop you on
to
that
be
point,
fair,
because when we look at these, some of these pictures that you talk about, because cameras captured them, we actually do see police law enforcement alongside these would-be goons. So one would also ask, with that picture that we see so clearly, I mean, I'm sure if we looked hard enough in a few minutes, Lydia could pull that up here in for us to see at the same time.
Yes.
But then the question would be here that would you acknowledge, would you agree that there was also some kind of infiltration, paid for infiltration into these protests by external parties from the protest?
I would say that question should be answered by investigation, so that we stop the speculation. Because when a person now pays money, you can even do a money trail on who is paying who. You can put a trail on who is speaking to who for the planning of that demonstration. And that's why I've brought in the question of technology. Technology must aid investigation, and two wrongs don't make a right. And let me tell you, Ndu, it wouldn't matter who paid a criminal gang to infiltrate a protest. It will not, I'm saying it won't matter because whether it's paid by Veronica or it's paid by Ndu or it's paid by an MP or an MCA, a wrong is a wrong.
Okay.
Prosecution must happen because there is the innocent Kenyan who has nothing to do with all what is happening. They get to see the videos, they get to see the destruction. Some even get to pay heavily. Like Magunando, did you see a supermarket burnt in Embu, that Meru direction? And then you've seen the counter supermarket in Muranga, which was invaded and everything cleared. And other supermarkets also have had their run-in with criminal gangs. For me, what I would say from a legal perspective, I'm a lawyer by profession. From a legal perspective, I would say a criminal is a criminal. And if we don't tame that criminality, we will be reading these articles of the Constitution like theory. It will become a theory, and then it will cease to be applicable to people. Why do I think burning down a police station is very dangerous? I think it is so dangerous because imagine the minute we become used to burning installations that are security installation. It means that if we have gone that far, we have the boldness to go to a police station. What do you think that criminal can do to an ordinary citizen? A person who fears not the police, and I guess not even God or man. What do you think that person can do to you in darkness? So that's why I think if there is anything people would feel that the police maybe have overstepped the boundary, let's use the structures to put them into accountability. But burning down a police station is out of order and it should be out of question.
Can we say it's a reflection of what then the reading from the top leadership? Because there has to be, we must have a bigger person in the room situation.
Yes.
So to
exactly.
to de-escalate all these things that are going on, because how the protest then morphed and you had infiltration of criminal gangs and goons hired by a politician or whoever it is. If we now take a step back and look at also the language and the tone, you look at state officials, right from the head of state, for example, the mixed signals, the messaging that will defy court orders, that will go against provisions that are in the Constitution. Then when you have that on this side, then what then are we expecting on this side? What should we then do? Because if the people are looking at the leaders and saying, they're also not following the Constitution, they're also not following the law, there is no order at the top, all the way through the politicians, through the ranks, and now to the Monanchi. What should we do?
I would say this, two wrongs once again don't make a right. And citizens have a right to hold their leadership into account on how they implement and apply this Constitution. Equally, we need to understand, if we don't accept to be guided by the Constitution, what then guides you? Is it your thinking, you as an individual? Do you read your script and I read my script and we continue disagreeing without having a compass that guides us into how we should behave? That's why I said this is the expected behavior, political behavior. It's governed by the Constitution. And when you're talking about constitutionalism and the rule of law, we must accept to be bound. If we have accepted that the judiciary is one of the arms of government, the three arms of government, then we must accept the only way I deal with a person who trespasses into my space is to take them to court, give them a right to be heard, and present their case before them, present my complaint and get it decided. So I don't think anybody would sit here and justify disobeying a court order, for instance. I don't think it would be correct. And from my training, it would not be correct. But I also must say something. People, we need a lot of civic education on who makes up government, if you ask yourself. Because we wake up every day, we say, we want government to do this, to do that, which is okay because we have elected leaders. But who makes up government? Government is made up of three arms, isn't it? Basic. You know, it's made up of executive,
judiciary,
and judiciary. And what I have seen, there is a way people distance themselves from that equation So they no longer feel as though, some people feel as though they don't belong. But if you look at the legislature, it's where you have representation of the people. So, for instance, I was doing a civic education in Gatanga the day before yesterday, and I was asking them, who do they think makes up government? Because I cannot make up government by myself. The president cannot make up government by himself. He's a single individual. The cabinet cannot make up government by itself. Neither can an MP, neither can a governor. Government is made up of you, me, the leader, our shosho in the village, the go-go who is where they are, our uncles, the children in school. That by itself is what makes up government. So when we go and allow a section of the people to burn down that police station, they're not burning the police station for the OCS or for the Interior Cabinet Secretary. You're burning it for all of us. And we need to understand we must start to take responsibility, all of us. The leadership must take responsibility. The people must also take their responsibility. The minute you get a right in the Constitution, it rides with a duty. There is a duty that rides with it. So when you take up, for instance, say Article 37, and to be balanced, let me say, even when the police officer takes up the gun, whom we have given him the gun to defend and protect the people of Kenya, when this one is taking up their right to protest and this one is taking up their gun to defend, there must be responsibility on each of them. There is a duty and there is a responsibility. And a right rides together with that responsibility. So for the officer who holds the gun, the application of force must come within the purview of human rights, the Bill of Rights. Now, the demonstrator who goes peaceably and unarmed, that is the provision of the Constitution. So if everyone was guarding their corner, the officer guards their corner, and me as a demonstrator, if I'm in the demonstration, I guard my corner. Imagine our lines will run parallel. And we now need to increasingly have a conversation on what is our civic duty, what is our understanding. Let me quote something I was trying to quote yesterday in Senate, which I didn't have enough time to submit. We had a time limitation. On the patriotism I see on the Americans, because it's always good to look at best practice elsewhere. There is a patriotism that when an American says, I'm an American, they're actually telling you how you are now managing them and the rights you are using around the American now. You need to start minding what you're doing. And they are sending a statement that my nationality defends something and stands for something. And I'm thinking it's time for us to think as Kenyans, what is our loyalty pledge to the nation and to the state of Kenya? What nation do we want to see? If you look at Kenya and the journey we have walked with our neighbors, Kenya has been like the labor ward for statehood and nationhood around Somalia, around DRC, around Ethiopia, around Eritrea, around Sudan, around Southern Sudan. If you look at the stature Kenya has always held, it's a stature we must defend jealously. And I know we have questions, for instance, that the youths may be feeling, or they're feeling, they're not maybe feeling, they've expressed it, like job opportunities. I said the other day, because I'm an advocate of saying, let's be honest in our conversations and let's be bold to discuss the real issues. When I came out of university over 20 years ago, I didn't have a job instantly like tomorrow. My own experience. And you know this one, nobody can argue with me because it's my experience.
It is yours.
Yes.
It is mine. This one, I own it. I was, Dennis, those days, I tarmacked for a job. I worked from one office looking for internship first. I tarmacked from one point to the other, just looking who could accommodate me so that I could do my pupillage to be admitted as an advocate. And even when I had finished, tarmacked for my pupillage, and then later I looked for a job, I still tarmacked for that job. So that there are very few countries in the world where you'll come out of college and find there is a job waiting for you immediately. There has to be some, like a sort of a period where you're feeling the ground, you're coming out, and you're looking for something just because of the the global economics, how the economics have been, and it's not only in Kenya, it's been across the board. And I know that's a pregnant question where there is an expectation that we should have enough jobs for everybody. That would be the ideal position, and that's a position I would also love. But then if we now use Article 37 as an avenue where we have built a platform for criminality, even some of the jobs that the young people are holding are going to go down the drain.
Senator, we talk about Article 37, which gives the right to demonstrate. But then again, you also look at Article 39 that gives Kenyans the right of freedom of movement.
Yes.
And you see, as we talk about the June 25th demonstrations and even the Sabasaba demos that happened, the police were given notifications with regard to the demos that would happen. And even the police commander in Nairobi, Mr. Seda, said, we shall be there. We are ready to give the demonstrators security that they have asked for them to be able to practice their constitutional right. But you wake up in the morning of Sabasaba and your right to movement has been curtailed. Why? Because police have blockaded all the roads in Nairobi and across the country. And at that point, the police are breaking the law and working against the constitution that there is. We go into the demonstrations that have happened, say, in the June 25th demonstrations, and we look at the notification and police offering security and asks the question, where were the police when the looters were there? Who has been arrested with regard to that? Because then one would say the police failed on their duty to provide security to the demonstrators who had given notification to them. And then you extrapolate that with statements being given by the political class, shoot to kill, shoot to maim, coming from the highest office in the land, which begs the question, at that point when you say police with the gun has to operate within the Bill of Rights, but then you have the leader of government who's giving orders which go against the very Bill of Rights. At that point, isn't the political class, police, failing on their duty of respecting the Constitution?
I'll answer two questions about barricading of Nairobi. And I want to look at the public interest, and I want to try and put myself in the shoes of those that the police or security actors who must maintain order, who must ensure that after the 7th of July, on the 8th of July, we still need a city that is intact. I need to walk back to Kenyatta Avenue, Moi Avenue, River Road, go down to Kamukonji, go down to Gekomba, and I want to find, if I had premises in one of those areas, I want to find everything intact. I want to find the boutiques next to City Hall. There are some boutiques and some shops that were broken into before, and some shops near Ludhuri and somewhere down there, which I saw even some of the shops from very business people, SMEs, very small traders, small-scale traders, whose even their shops were vandalized. I saw one lady very bitter and crying to God for their businesses having been looted. I saw one other business near OTC, which had been a legacy of a family. It was completely destroyed. And I tried to balance in my mind between protecting these businesses and livelihoods because of the one day, and the option of opening up the streets for everybody to go everywhere and then dealing with the mayhem the following day. Which one outweighs the other? For me, if I was still in their position, I would say, if you can still protest maybe in a certain area without damning anybody or breaking or hitting any child within a residential area, I would say I would rather please use Gong Road, and I'll place a restriction. Don't touch any gate to a residential estate. Don't touch any property that is housing businesses along that Gong Road. I would say yes, if you want to use the tarmac, use the tarmac peacefully, unarmed. Do your right, but don't touch anything. Because when you touch anything, then you are crossing the red line. Don't touch. And criminality, if you find you're in a peaceful demonstration and you can see elements you don't understand. We also need to say to the demonstrator, be very alert when you walk out into a demonstration.
They did, Veronica, and I think we can stop and say that we have instances. And again, after you talked about technology, and I think that's the beauty of technology.
Yes.
Because some of this stuff is imprinted
why
in
I'm
history
saying that?
forever. There were people
Yes.
who were screaming on the
Yes.
street,
Yeah.
begging the
Yeah.
police
Yeah.
to save them from the
Yes.
hands of hooligans in the street. It didn't happen. There were young women who were begging
Which
the
would
police.
be unfortunate.
It happened.
Let me say
it was
this,
extremely
Ndu,
unfortunate. And
it
so
would
the
be
question
unfortunate.
is, where do you draw that line?
Yes, and that is where, because we seem to have meshed up everything now, when the demo is being done, that's why we need to now recall and say what happened and why did it happen. And I don't have an answer, a direct answer myself, because I do not know who has sent that criminal gang until we have an investigation within Nairobi to say, in Nairobi, this specific area, this gang seems like it came from A, because what happened in Nairobi may not be what happened in Murang'a. And that's why we don't give blanket answers.
Who's to insist for an investigation to take place?
There is no need for insistence.
But we're sitting here
Automatically
weeks later,
do.
a year
and
after
this is where
June
media
20
must help us.
So if
Let
I
me
may,
say-
Veronica, a year after June 25th, 2024, and we saw that over 50 lives were lost. Do you know that to date, one investigation has not taken place to completion?
Let me
So
say
this is my question.
Let me say
when
this.
we say
They
that
are
we should
investigative.
we should be able to pinpoint
Yes.
how does that happen?
One
and
of
who
the things I would
insists?
agree with you is that investigation should be completed. Even for purposes of records to say this is what happens on this day and this is how these lives were lost. So that IPOA must give an account. We must allow institutions to do their accountability on some of these issues without politicizing. Because, you can argue on politics, you can argue on constitution until you lose somebody. And then it becomes personal. When it becomes personal, that's when you see you almost don't want to know what is in books or in theory. You just want to know the truth. And I would agree with you that if we have the DCI, the investigations must be completed and speedily so that we can give a closure. But we must also agree, as citizens, our responsibility is this. If you look at the ratio between the number of citizens and the police, we have very low police coverage. And I want you for a moment to also assume, it's always good to look at both sides. And I look at both sides, and I have told you from the onset, anything to me that looks like violence, I have a resistance to it like a 200%, because it never ends well. And it's a loss for everybody. So my statement should not be taken to mean that I'm sitting, looking, or almost celebrating anything wrong that is going on. But I want to put myself in a situation where your guard down here has been given the job to repulse anybody who looks like they are coming to attack the announcers in the studio. I want to put myself in their shoes. If that guard finds a gang of 10, 15, 20 people who would overpower him automatically, are approaching the building, how do you expect him to behave even before he gets an order from anybody? Because sometimes I tend to think, and it's my thinking, because I know the Constitution stipulates the IG, by the way, and let me also now separate the directive from the president and the office of the IG. Okay? The IG under the Constitution is independent. Are we together? In terms of the operation, I would not be surprised that something is happening in Mombasa, which the IG is dealing with, and many of them will happen, which the president even would have to be briefed later. Let's agree on that on a normal operations of this studio, something could happen here, which even your MD only gets briefed in the evening. Are you together? So the IG is independent, even from the CS of Interior. Under the Constitution, I checked it again today, he can only direct on policy. Okay? He cannot direct on operations. Meaning, for instance, the order for shooting to maim, for instance, the one you have asked me about. The person who will be held responsible constitutionally even by IPOA, for anything they do, by the way, will be who? IG.
So why would the president
Why
say
would
it?
They
the president
understand.
say
No, listen. I'm giving you the constitutional stipulation. When it comes to the operation, this is what you happen. How does that then help the IG in expediting the orders that are given? The IG is assumed to understand their role in the Constitution and assumed to know that, yes, you've been given a gun and you've been given the microphone to do your work here. The police have been given part of their tools of work is a gun. But how they use that gun is subject to a check by IPOA for excessive use of force. Do you get my point? So that if the IG and the officers understand their responsibility and their role, they know that you cannot then come and take a cover and say, the reason why I shot Dennis is because I had a directive from Veronica, or I had a directive from so-and-so.
So for clarity, essentially what you're saying, what you're saying is that
that it shouldn't alarm.
On hearing such a directive, that they know their responsibility.
They should know their
they
responsibility.
Should essentially
always
go ahead and ignore that because it could have come from a moment of what? Emotion?
It could come from a moment of also seeing that when the question comes out of, too many businesses destroyed, livelihoods being destroyed, lives being risked, you don't want to escalate it further. It could come from that moment of, you immobilize these people so they stop doing this or that.
Should we then sit here and say that
I would say, I don't even want to judge the statement. What you could even do, by the way, our good thing, our president takes media and can take media interviews. He can even answer that question. But what I'm saying is, there is still a stopgap that really helps the IG in executing the orders that they are given. Meaning, if IG stood and did what is the correct thing to be done under the Constitution, only shooting when it is necessary to shoot and never shooting when it's not necessary. Because you could be in a situation where it is so risky that something has to be done to save a bigger group of people. Because there must be a reason why the gun was given. Is there a reason why the gun was given?
Senator,
to defend. Are we together? To defend. But I'm saying if the IG is reading the laws and is looking that whatever I get to do, I will be answerable myself. And they have seen it.
And you see,
they'll be answerable.
And one would argue the same, that even when the president is making such statements, one should not assume it's just because the IG, ostensibly the police, know their role and they will act by the law. Case in point, after the statement that was given by Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen on shoot to kill, there was the demonstration that happened on Sabasaba Day, and we had a police officer asking demonstrators, and I quote him, "Rudini kwa nyumba, niko na amri ya kukuua, leo utalala kwa fridge."
Nani alisema hivyo?
This is a police officer. It is in a video that is out here.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
I haven't seen
I'm
it.
telling
If
you,
I saw it, the person who should be held accountable for that statement will actually be the officer who has issued that statement.
And what I'm saying is
statements
that are being made by individuals who are higher in authority in government should not be dismissed and should not be allowed to happen simply because they are speaking at the moment simply because they were pissed off.
I want to give an example of something, and I'd like you to maybe, Jen, help us draw some parallels, because you're a legal mind, you get it as well. We have people today who will languish as guests of the International Criminal Court, not because they were actively engaged in conflict, but because they gave an order. Felician Kabuga hid from the public eye and from security agencies for decades before he was found like a rat in an apartment in Paris. He wasn't engaged in the conflict in Rwanda. He gave orders. He facilitated. He spent money. There were people who got on the radio in Kigali and basically ordered the Interahamwe to do the things that they did. Those generals today are in jail. They'll be in jail for life. There are people who ordered for the rape and maiming and massacre of women and children by an order. Word of mouth. They were never in the killing fields. They were never on the floor of conflict. They gave an order. They are the ones who are held responsible. The thousands of soldiers who were on the battlefield did not make their way into the court.
And you know what that should teach us? That should teach us, all of us, None left out. Reducing pointing, accusing fingers, but looking first introspectively. What have I done to contribute to the situation that is on the table? And how do we resolve our issues? Do we resolve our issues by a fight? Do we resolve our issues by talking out the issues and finding solutions which are practical? How do we resolve? And do we accept to be guided by constitutionalism? And that is why I've gone back to constitutionalism, Ndo. I have said, if we don't go back to constitutionalism, the topic of the day today, if we don't accept to be guided by the constitutionalism, obviously there will be hiccups along the way. Because every time you breach or you cross the line, you most likely will be held responsible for crossing the line. And that's why I've said, for the police officers who, of course, now feel like also I think they're also feeling like they're embattled because of the comments and the kind of attitude Kenyans are having towards the officers, which also we need to check once again whether that's the correct position. I think, in my view, as we continually talk about police reforms and put the police to, a position where we want them reformed and looking into application of their functions within constitutionalism, we equally must accept that we want a place where there is law and order and there is constitutionalism. Why do we need the law and order? Because if you give us 2 police officers for 1,000 people, they are not enough to govern us. We must accept
There's an
to be
administration
governed.
problem as well.
Yes, we must accept to be governed and to acknowledge that these are the officers who are defending and protecting us. And the officers, on the other hand, when they hold the gun, they must know that any excessive use of force will subject them to the same rules that the people are looking at when they go to demonstrate.
Veronica, here's where the
So
challenge
it's where
lies.
we must strike a balance and an understanding that for this to happen, this must also happen. I want to wake up in the morning and have my children go to school. You also want that to happen. It cannot happen if we make it so impossible, even for the few officers in the Republic of Kenya, to govern what we are doing.
Here is where the challenge lies. If we take a step back to look at why we had the protests in the first place, the first one that we had, it was about the tax burden in this country. Those people who are coming to the streets before this infiltration and the violence that now we've seen escalate, they were coming to the streets because they love their country. They want their future secured. And because many of these are young people, they feel their future is going to be messed by what currently is happening in the leadership. So when now you fast forward, now you're looking at issues of justice, you're looking at issues of impunity, corruption, the tax burden, mismanagement, governance issues. Bridget Njoki was watching television with her mother. She was not protesting on the streets. She was killed by a police bullet. When you look at the tone set by the leadership, is one that lacks empathy, lacks compassion, lacks to address this and many, many, many other examples of young people who the average age, when you look at it, is around 23, 24. When you have that kind of situation, and then you have the top leadership not going into the Constitution, because these young people are saying, look, let's go back to the Constitution. Whatever you're doing is wrong. Whatever you're doing is disrespectful. Whatever you're doing is against the law. It's against the Constitution. They are pushing for that. But then what you get, the tone that now is set from the top is, we will disregard court orders. We will shoot to kill. They will, like Otundu was saying, head of state, an interior CS will say, I'm giving you direction, take that gun, shoot to kill. Then retract and say, this is not what I meant. You've got all these conflicting statements that are coming from the top leadership. Then at this bottom level, where do you then expect for people to then address their issues and say, we've had enough, these are our issues? Is it not then on the streets?
Let me say this. Let me begin with the story of Bridget Njoki. I'm a mother. The story of Bridget Njoki is really sad, and it should never happen. And that's why we should never allow ourselves, even our nation, to reach that position. And I want to say to Bridget Njoki's mom and family and friends and all the people who were in the funeral, and I saw how sad it was, that we deeply condole with you. because Bridget should not have been caught up in this crossfire because she was inside. And you can, of course, see the bullet that caught Bridget was, I don't even think it was intended to go anywhere into a home and take out a child. It's really sad, and I'm sorry, and we pray for you that God will give you comfort, because it's only God who can comfort you under such difficult circumstances. And that is why everybody must say, if for no other person, but for the likes of Bridget, for the likes of Boniface, let's put all our differences on the table and try and resolve whatever it takes us, but not violence, not the gun, not the shooting. All of us must wake up in Kenya now and say, I want to be a peace ambassador. Things have happened which are so bad. And there are some that cannot be undone, because even if you're given a compensation and you lost a child like Bridget, you know that compensation can only ease up a few things, but the feelings may not be covered by the compensation, the experience, how they feel.
You can never pay for a life.
You can't pay for that. And that is why we need to say, if this has happened, let's now say it's time to stop and reconsider how we are conducting our business. On both sides, and not on one side. All of us, because there are those who are governing, us who are in leadership positions, and there are those who are governed. It is time for all of us, and institutions which are in the Republic of Kenya, including organizations, religious bodies. It's time to pause and say, let's have a genuine conversation that is looking for solutions, because Kenya has been in such situations in different times, showing different, coming up in different shapes. Even when during the constitutional making process, we have been through such roads before, but we didn't have to sink. So do we say things are so bad now that we continue sinking, or do we say things are too bad, we stop, we must now continue rising and getting solutions? One of the problems I'm having with some of the people who are not even giving those orders that you are quoting here, some of the politicians, their words are worse than a matchbox that's lighting the businesses that are being lit on the streets. And let me express my dissatisfaction with the performance of NCIC. Just as a way of challenge, not as a way of killing the institution, as a way of saying NCIC would honestly need to really do more than they are doing right now. Because when I see commissioners are even so aligned to politicians and taking certain positions, do you think I would ever trust that commissioner if I'm to present a case before the commission? Do you think I will feel I'll be judged properly when I know a commissioner is aligned to Dennis or aligned to Nundu? If I come in, I'm on the opposite side, I'm from a different station, do you think I'm going to entrust? I'm saying that so that the kind of speeches we are making in public right now as politicians, from whichever divide, profiling people, we must stop it. And I think it's important for us to begin a fresh journey where we first love one another as Kenyans and know that as a Kenyan, I'm not going anywhere, Ndu, by the way. I'm not going to be a Tanzanian citizen. I'm not going to Uganda. That's not my intention. It's only circumstances that can push a Kenyan to change their nationality today. And if we are not going anywhere, we are here. How then do we conduct our business? How do we ventilate? And I want to say something. For the parliament, if you have not noticed any change, we have started taking the grievances in a very serious fashion. But we also need to stop. You know, social media is being used sometimes to fuel a lot of hatred, cyberbullying, finishing institutions. We need to start building. We decide positively, even the media, let's start sending a positive vibe. And I saw something change with the media, and I commend you the last few days. The messaging that is being done across several stations is about peace. And I want to encourage you. Let's talk peace. Let's get ambassadors of peace. Let's say we have enough messages now on the ground, and it's time for us to change the trajectory and give ourselves a new direction.
Still a lot of work to be done.
A lot of work.
Necessary for us to have these conversations. We want to thank you so much, Senator, for being here this morning, opening that up and not burying our heads in the sand.
Yes.
Senator Veronica Minor has been our guest this hour. Thank you so much. At 8:01, good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your